There is a moment that every naval strategist in the Pentagon quietly dreads. Not a nuclear launch, not a full-scale carrier battle. Something quieter, more surgical, and far more humiliating. It's the moment when the most powerful Navy ever assembled, a force that cost American taxpayers trillions of dollars, that projects American power to every corner of the earth, suddenly becomes the most expensive target in history. And that moment may have just arrived. While the United States was pouring carriers into the Persian Gulf, stacking destroyers like poker chips in a show of force designed to bend Iran's will at the nuclear negotiating table, Beijing made a move so quiet that Washington barely noticed it happening. China didn't fire a shot. They didn't need to. They handed Iran something far more dangerous. According to a Reuters investigation backed by 6 separate sources familiar with the negotiations, Iran was on the verge of finalizing a deal to acquire China's CM-302, a supersonic anti-ship cruise missile that travels at up to 4 times the speed of sound and is specifically engineered to do one thing: kill the kind of warships America relies on most. And if you think that sounds like a distant defense policy debate with no bearing on your life, consider this. The Strait of Hormuz, a narrow choke point just 21 nautical miles wide at its tightest, carries roughly 20 to 25% of the world's seaborne oil supply. Every tanker that moves through that bottleneck, every LNG shipment headed to Europe, every barrel of crude flowing to Asian refineries passes through water that Iran now watches from above, below, and alongside. If that strait becomes genuinely contested, oil prices don't tick up by a few cents. They don't drift up to uncomfortable levels, they explode. And the consequences from your gas pump to your grocery bill to the stock market on your retirement account follow immediately behind. So let's break down exactly what China handed Iran, why it matters more than almost anything else happening in the Middle East right now, and why the Pentagon's response tells you everything you need to know about the state of American naval power. The CM-302 is the export version of China's YJ-12, the missile that Pentagon analysts have quietly referred to as the most dangerous anti-ship weapon China has ever fielded. The YJ-12 is what keeps U.S. Navy planners awake at night when they think about a potential Pacific conflict. Its export twin, the CM-302, is just slightly hobbled for international sale. Range capped at roughly 280 to 290 kilometers. Warhead trimmed to around 250 kilos. That still puts it in an entirely different category from anything Iran currently has in its arsenal. Here is what makes it so lethal and so different. Iran already has anti-H-ship missiles. It has the No, the Carter, the Abu Mahdi, all serious weapons with real range. But the vast majority of Iran's anti-ship infantry is subsonic. Subsonic means the missile is moving below the speed of sound, which gives a modern Aegis-equipped destroyer precious seconds, sometimes as many as a minute, to detect, track, classify, and engage the threat. That's not comfortable, but it is workable. American naval doctrine is built around it. The CM-302 changes that equation completely. It doesn't approach its target at the speed of sound. It approaches at Mach 2.5 to Mach 4. At Mach 3, the missile is covering roughly 1 kilometer every single second. According to analysis published by the War on the Rocks Defense Journal, when a Sekhming missile of this class crests the radar horizon and is detected, the defending ship has approximately 45 seconds to respond. That 45 seconds has to include detection, radar lock, threat classification, command authorization, and the physical flight time of whatever interceptor is fired. It has to include the possibility that the missile performs evasive maneuvers, corkscrew turns, and altitude changes in its terminal phase that are baked into its design specifically to break fire control solutions, and it has to account for the fact that the CM-302 is not flying in at altitude where it is easy to see. It is flying in at sea level using the ocean surface itself as concealment until it is nearly too close to stop. The guidance package compounds the problem further. The CM-302 uses BEO satellite navigation during its cruise phase, China's answer to GPS, with an active radar seeker that activates in the terminal phase to lock on to the specific target. Critically, the missile has a data link that allows its targeting information to be updated in flight. That means the launcher doesn't need to have eyes on the target at the moment of firing. Iran can fire from deep inside its own coastline, hidden among mountains and mobile launcher sites, and redirect the weapon toward a specific ship mid-flight using updated targeting data from a drone, a satellite feed, or a coastal radar network. The CM-302 is also not a one-trick weapon. It is not tied to a single platform. It can be launched from ground-based mobile launches, from ships, and from aircraft. Mobile ground-based launches are particularly important in the Persian Gulf context because they are survivable They drive out, fire, and relocate. You cannot take them out with a single precision strike, the way you can destroy a fixed missile battery. And Iran's coastline, rocky, mountainous, honeycombed with tunnels and underground facilities, is purpose-built for hiding exactly this kind of dispersed mobile strike capability. Now take all of that and place it inside the geography of the Strait of Hormuz, and you begin to understand why defense analysts describe the potential transfer as, in their words, a complete game-changer. Danny Citrinowicz, a former Israeli military intelligence officer and senior researcher at Israel's Institute for National Security Studies, told Reuters bluntly, "These missiles are very difficult to intercept. The strait at its narrowest is 21 nautical miles across, but the actual designated shipping lanes, the corridors through which tankers and warships must travel, are far narrower than that, and they run along Iran's northern coastline. This isn't a wide-open ocean where a carrier strike group has room to maneuver, spread its defensive umbrella, and operate from comfortable distance. This is a bathtub. Iran's coastline is on one side. The shallow, constrained waters of the Gulf are everywhere else." A CM-302 fired from the Zagros mountain foothills aimed at a ship transiting the designated lanes covers that distance in under 3 minutes. The ship's crew would have been at action stations before the missile was even airborne, and they would still be rushing to respond when it arrived. To understand how dramatically this upgrades Iran's hand, you have to understand what Iran's anti-ship arsenal looked like before this deal. For years, Iran built its maritime deterrence around quantity rather than quality. Thousands of naval mines, some estimates put the stockpile at 5,000 to 6,000, including sophisticated influence mines designed to defeat conventional mine clearance operations, a large and constantly evolving inventory of subsonic cruise missiles, ballistic missiles with maneuvering warheads designed to dive on ships from above, the Courage FARS and Horus 2 variants, swarms of small fast attack craft equipped with rockets and guns designed to overwhelm by sheer numbers, submarines including 3 Russian Kilo-class diesel boats that are genuinely difficult to detect in shallow, acoustically complex Gulf waters. This layered architecture is serious. It is not a joke, but it has gaps. The subsonic missiles are vulnerable to interception by systems that American destroyers have carried for decades. The fast attack swarms can be engaged by helicopters and the phalanx close-in weapon systems before they get into lethal range. The ballistic missile variants, while challenging, approach from a predictable ballistic arc that SM-series interceptors are designed to defeat. The Aegis combat system, the integrated radar, battle management, and fire control architecture on American destroyers and cruisers was specifically designed and continuously upgraded to handle these kinds of threats. The CM-302 strikes at the seams of that architecture. It is not a ballistic threat. It doesn't arc high into the sky and dive. It is not a slow subsonic threat. It doesn't give Aegis radar the long tracking windows it needs to generate reliable fire control solutions. It is a supersonic sea skimmer. It exploits the one category of threat where Aegis systems are most stressed. Fast, low, maneuvering and arriving from beyond visual range with almost no warning time. And it is designed to be used in salvos, multiple missiles arriving from multiple directions, forcing the defending ship to simultaneously engage several inbound threats across different bearings, while the crew manages the psychological pressure of a combat situation unfolding in seconds rather than minutes. There is a harder truth buried in this story, one that defense budget discussions rarely surface in public. The United States Navy does not currently have a supersonic anti-ship cruise missile in operational service. America's primary anti-ship weapon, the Harpoon, is subsonic. The newer Naval Strike Missile is subsonic. The Long-Range Anti-Ship Missile, or LRASM, is subsonic. China fields supersonic systems. Russia fields supersonic systems. Iran may soon field a supersonic system purchased from China. The United States, for all its naval dominance, has been slower to field the weapons category that the CM-302 represents. That asymmetry doesn't make the American fleet useless. The Aegis intercept capability, the F-35 and F-A-18 aircraft that can strike launchers before missiles are fired, the electronic warfare systems, the submarines, all of these remain formidable, but the CM-302 narrows the margin. Now consider the timing, because the timing is everything. Reuters reported this deal moving toward completion in late February 2026, at exactly the moment when the United States had assembled its largest naval deployment to the Middle East since the 2003 invasion of Iraq. The USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group was operating in the Arabian Sea just south of Iran. The USS Gerald R. Ford, the Navy's newest and most advanced aircraft carrier, displacing more than 100,000 tons, had crossed the Mediterranean and was heading toward the region. Reports from the Wall Street Journal and others indicated the USS George H.W. Bush was being readied for a potential third carrier deployment. The combined firepower of two fully operational carrier strike groups includes roughly 200 aircraft, 2,000 missiles, and escort vessels equipped with the full complement of American naval weapons. This was Trump's show of force. This was the armada meant to pressure Tehran into a nuclear deal. This was the credible military threat behind the ultimatum. And right as that armada was steaming into position, China was quietly equipping Iran with the weapon most specifically designed to threaten it. The negotiations that led here began at least 2 years before they became public. They accelerated sharply in the summer of 2025, following the 12-day war between Israel and Iran in June of that year. A conflict that left Iran's military infrastructure badly battered, its missile stockpiles depleted, and its leadership facing the immediate question of how to rebuild deterrence quickly. Senior Iranian officials, including Deputy Defense Minister Masoud Orai, traveled to Beijing for negotiations that Reuters describes as having reached an advanced stage. The size of the order, the price, and the delivery schedule were still being finalized as of late February 2026, but 6 separate sources with direct knowledge of the talks described the deal as near completion. China's official position was denial. Beijing's foreign ministry told Reuters it was not aware of any such negotiations. This is, to put it plainly, the standard language China uses when it is doing something it does not want officially acknowledged. It is the same language Beijing used when Chinese entities were supplying chemical precursors, including sodium perchlorate, an ingredient for solid rocket fuel, to Iran's missile program. The U.S. Treasury Department sanctioned several Chinese companies for exactly that activity. China denied it then, too. The strategic logic from Beijing's perspective is not hard to follow. China does not need to fire a single bullet at an American carrier to complicate American power projection in the Persian Gulf. It only needs to make that carrier's job more difficult, more dangerous, and more expensive. Every SM-6 or SM-2 interceptor the United States fires in defense costs between $2 and $5 million. The CM-302 costs a fraction of that, and Iran doesn't need to sink an American carrier to win the information war that surrounds any kinetic clash in the Gulf. It only needs to hit something. It only needs to create the news footage that plays on every screen around the world. A U.S. warship on fire in the Strait of Hormuz, crew evacuating in orange life vests, black smoke rising over the water. That footage played once reshapes the entire geopolitical conversation about American naval dominance. Beijing understands this, and Beijing is simultaneously pursuing arms sales negotiations that reportedly extend beyond the CM-302. According to the same sources that revealed the anti-ship missile deal, Iran is also in discussions with China for surface-to-air missiles, man-portable air defense systems, anti-ballistic missile systems, and potentially even anti-satellite weapons. If that full package were delivered, it would represent the most comprehensive upgrade of Iranian military capability since the arms embargo that constrained Iranian purchases began loosening in October 2023. It would give Tehran a layered air defense capable of complicating the American air campaign that forms the backbone of any strike option against Iranian nuclear sites. It would give Iran's proxies access to shoulder-fired missiles that could threaten low-flying aircraft and helicopters across a vast geographic area. And it would signal in unmistakable terms that the China-Iran-Russia axis, which already conducts joint naval exercises in the Strait of Hormuz and the Arabian Sea, has taken a significant step toward practical military integration. This matters because of a pattern that has been building for years. After the original Iran nuclear deal collapsed in 2018, China quietly stepped in as the dominant economic lifeline for Tehran, absorbing sanctioned Iranian oil at discounted prices and providing access to technology, goods, and capital that the West was trying to deny. The relationship was cemented in a 25-year cooperation agreement signed in 2021, covering investment, trade, and, according to critics, military and security cooperation. The CM-302 deal, if it proceeds, is the most visible and operationally consequential expression of that partnership so far. For the United States Navy, the response to the CM-302 threat has to be layered, and none of the layers are simple. The first layer is offensive. Find and destroy the launchers before the missiles are fired. In a war with Iran, that means sustained intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance operations over Iranian territory to locate mobile launcher positions, followed by rapid strike packages to neutralize them before they reload. The F-35 and F-A-18 aircraft on American carriers are capable of this mission, but it is a race. Mobile launchers move. The Iranians have spent decades studying how the United States hunts fixed and mobile targets, and they have hardened their dispersal and concealment methods accordingly. The second layer is electronic warfare. The CM-302's guidance package, BU navigation, and active radar terminal homing is vulnerable to jamming and spoofing. American destroyers and EA-18G Growler aircraft carry sophisticated electronic warfare suites specifically designed to corrupt enemy guidance systems. But jamming a supersonic missile with 45 seconds of warning time while simultaneously managing radar tracks on multiple incoming threats while coordinating point defense weapons. This is not a guaranteed outcome. It is a high-stakes contest of technology and reaction time playing out in real space. The third layer is interceptors. SM-2, SM-3, and SM-6 missiles form the backbone of American naval air defense. Against a subsonic threat, they are effective against a supersonic maneuvering segment threat. They are challenged. The SM-6 has been modified to handle faster threats, and it is the current best option for engaging a CM-302 class missile in its terminal phase. But SM-6 is expensive. The magazines on destroyers are finite, and saturation attacks firing multiple CM-302s simultaneously from different bearings are designed precisely to drain those magazines. And the fourth and final layer, the brutal one, the one nobody in the Navy wants to discuss openly, is accepting that in a real sustained conflict in a constrained waterway like the Strait of Hormuz, even the best defenses might not achieve a 100% intercept rate. And in naval warfare, unlike air combat, you don't get to absorb repeated hits and keep flying. You take one hit from a 250-kilo warhead arriving at Mach 3 in a ship that displaces 9,000 tons, and you have a crisis. You take that same hit in a ship that displaces 100,000 tons, and you have a fire. You take multiple hits, and you have something that makes global headlines and rewrites strategic calculations for a decade. None of this means the American Navy is helpless. The idea that the U.S. fleet is simply defenseless against the CM-302 overstates what a single missile system, even a very good one, can accomplish against the full-spectrum defense architecture of a carrier strike group. American naval officers are clear-eyed about the threat, and the Aegis combat system has been upgraded repeatedly precisely because China and Russia have been developing supersonic anti-ship missiles for years. The USS Abraham Lincoln's air wing successfully intercepted Iranian ballistic missiles and drones during previous confrontations. American naval capability remains, by most rigorous assessment, unmatched in total combat power. But here is the question that actually matters. For decades, the Persian Gulf was a domain where American carriers operated with a level of security that their crews could feel. The threat was real, but manageable. The calculus was clear. Now that calculus is changing. Not because Iran can fight the United States to a draw, not because China has handed Thrawn the ability to simply close the Gulf to American power, but because the margin of safety that American sailors depended on is narrowing. And it is narrowing at the precise moment of maximum tension, maximum carrier density, and maximum political stakes. When Ayatollah Ali Khamenei wrote in February 2026, days before the strikes that would begin the current conflict, that American warships in the Gulf can be sent to the bottom of the sea. That was not empty theater. It was a statement calibrated to be credible. It was a statement made by a regime that had just been negotiating for the exact weapon capable of backing it up. The CM-302 deal tells a story that goes beyond Iran, beyond the Strait of Hormuz, beyond even the current crisis. It tells the story of a world in which the military technological advantages that allowed the United States to project power freely for 3 decades are being systematically eroded. Not by an adversary building a bigger navy, not by a rival developing a better carrier, but by the quiet proliferation of precision, fast, affordable, and highly lethal missiles that give smaller powers the ability to raise the cost of American naval presence to levels that are politically, strategically, and financially unsustainable. China didn't need to fight the U.S. Navy to hurt it in the Gulf. It just needed to hand the right weapon to the right adversary at the right moment. And as U.S. carriers steam through contested waters in a conflict that is already reshaping the region, the significance of that transfer, complete or still in progress, will be measured not just in strategic analysis papers, but potentially in smoke over the water. If this story made you think differently about what's really at stake in the Gulf, hit that like button and subscribe, because the developments unfolding right now are moving faster than most media can track. And this is exactly the kind of deep analysis that never makes the evening news. I'll see you in the next